I will be analyzing 13 ways of looking at a blackbird.
1. Among 20 snowy mountains, the only moving thing was the eye of the blackbird.
2. I was of 3 minds, like a tree, in which there are 3 blackbirds.
3. The blackbird whirled in the autumn winds. It was a small part of the pantomime.
4. A man and a woman are one. A man and a woman and a blackbird are one. 5. I do not know which to prefer, the beauty of inflections or the beauty of innuendos, the blackbird whistling or just after. 6. Icicles filled the long window with barbaric glass. The shadow of the blackbird crossed it, to and fro. The mood traced in the shadow an indecipherable cause. 7. O thin men of Haddam, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the blackbird walks around the feet of the woman about you? 8. I know noble accents and lucid, inescapable rhythms. But I know, too, that the blackbird is involved in what I know. 9. When the blackbird flew out of sight, it marked the edge of one of many circles. 10. At the sight of blackbirds flying in a green light, even the bawds of euphony would cry out sharply. 11. He rode over Connecticut in a glass coach. Once a fear pierced him, in that he mistook the shadow of his equipage for blackbirds. 12. The river is moving. The blackbird must be flying. 13. It was evening all afternoon. It was snowing, and it was going to snow. The blackbird sat in the cedar limbs. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the symbol of the blackbird. To me, I thought it represented like a bad omen or ill fate or like coming mortality or death in general. And you can see that outlined through this like overarching theme of like seasons and the cycle of life. And it's also portrayed through like different perceptions on how we view reality and just the world in general. For example, in the second stanza, this poem is written in first person, so it kind of gives like a deeper, like first-hand experience with the blackbird or like a closer relationship to it. And then, yeah, so I was of 3 minds, basically like 3 different ways of seeing reality, I think, like a tree in which there are 3 blackbirds. So yeah, it's talking about like how he's relating to the blackbird really closely. And then stanza 3, the blackbird whirled in the autumn winds. So first you see the season again, like autumn slowly going to death, like winter, and then a small part of the pantomime. So basically the author here is saying like autumn, where winter is inevitably close, death is also just a small part of like the craziness in the world. Like it's always inevitable, it will always be happening. It's just, it's just there because that's just how it functions. And then number 4, the 4th stanza, a man and a woman are one. So I know it's talking about marriage. I mean, that's a part of life, right? But then it says a man and a woman and a blackbird are one. So it's kind of like an ironic twist, like you don't expect that to happen. And I thought of the quote, like, till death do us part. And so yeah, kind of like how marriage and death are connected too in the life cycle. And also what he does not prefer in stanza 5, like inflections, innuendos, the blackbird whistling or just after. So I guess like inflections and innuendos are kind of like subtle hints to what reality could be, but you're confused and you don't really know. So it's kind of like a confusing mood and atmosphere here. And it's talking about the blackbird whistling, which I took as like a signal of a bad omen. So you don't really know what's happening. It's like a really confusing, I mean, that's how reality is. Like no one really knows reality to its like whole depths. That's why it's like confusing that way. in 7, it talks about like, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see the black bird walking around the feet of the woman about you? So it's talking about like, why do you set your like ideal like hopes and expectations so high when the actual reality is the blackbird, which is death. So it's also talking about that perspective, like, don't have such a like ideal perspective of reality when reality is really like this, like you're still gonna die, you're not going to heaven, you know. Then you go to noble accents, and it talks about inescapable rhythm. So that kind of gave me like vibes of like ancient history and civilizations. And that talks about like throughout history, the black bird or death was always there. So death plays a role in every civilization and on every person. And it was there from the beginning of history. For stanza 9, it's talking about the blackbird flying out of sight and marked the edge of one of many circles. So it's probably talking like beyond just the stage of death. There's probably other things that we don't really know about, and that's because we just can't perceive that, and that's just not in the reality that we can process. Also in 10, it's talking about the blackbirds and how the women are like crying out sharply, basically saying like every status of life you're in, no matter who you are or what you do, you're still gonna die. That's really grim, but that's what the author is trying to say. In 11, it's talking about a man getting confused with a shadow and the blackbird, meaning that it's like a paranoia or a confusion. So in this case, it's like a person being scared of death, but because like he knows it's coming. So that's also a cool way to like view it. Like death is like so scary, but it's inevitable. And then the next one, it's really different. The river is flowing, the blackbird must be flying. So the river flowing, I think of like life and springtime and time. And if there's life, then there's death. I mean, if there's time, that's how the whole life cycle occurs. And then after that, it was evening all afternoon. That's a really contradicting statement. It's just really confusing, right? So it's talking about how is reality really what we make of it? And it was snowing and it was going to snow. Like there's death now and there always will be death. I guess I can also relate snow to death, I guess, in a way. And then the blackbird sat in the cedar limb. So this is going back to the beginning of the setting. The evening all afternoon, it was kind of like a wake-up call. Like you're so confused. But I guess that's the point of it, because you really don't know how you're perceiving reality. You really don't know what's happening right now. And how I relate to this, yeah, of course everyone's scared of death and it's inevitable. And obviously like this makes me like confused, like, oh, really we don't know what we know. Is what we know actually true in the end? So yeah.